seen this over the last, 6, 7 years. But it's good to see new faces too as we're bringing this kind of back to life. My name is Mary Michael. I'm the Watershed Coordinator with Texas Water Resources and Safety. That is a part of Texas A&M AgLife. We like to say it's Texas' best kept secret because everyone knows what Texas A&M is. And then you talk about Texas Water Resources and they're like, what's that? So part of what we do is help create watershed protection plans and implement them. And that's why we're here today at Cibolo Creek. So we did just turn the lights on, but we're going to get started with introductions, which is honestly my favorite part because I really like to see who's in the room, who you're sitting next to, and who we're missing for the implementation of this plan and who we need at the table. So I'll go ahead. I started already. I'm representing TWRI. My name is Mary Michael. And where are you coming from? I live in San Antonio, so I cover the Medina River and the Cibolo Creek, so I can get to both of them on either side, so it's good to be kind of centrally located. What motivated me to come to this meeting? I had to. This is my job. But in all reality, I really do believe in this, and to get that creek back to fishable and swimmable, to get it back to where we can all enjoy it again, and to not have to keep hating actually is something that I truly believe in. So I would probably be here regardless if I had to be here or not. But we're gonna just do that quickly around the room. If y'all could just introduce yourself. Just a couple announcements before I get going. The bathroom is in the back where it says exit. We do have Wilson County News here. If anyone doesn't want their picture taken, just let us know so you can not be in those pictures. Any other announcements? Oh, yeah, let's turn the lights on. There's coffee in the back as well. It's on the bar. That's why it's not up here with the snacks, but there are snacks. Sorry we ran out of ice, and the drinks are like lukewarm, but they're still pretty good. All right, Kaylee, we'll start with you. We'll turn the lights back on.
I'm Katie Marshall. I'm a biologist in the San Antonio River and I also live in this watershed. So I'm super excited to be here and see all the guys here. And I'm excited to talk to you guys today about water quality monitoring in this watershed.
Good afternoon, my name is Nelson Diaz, I'm the new extension agent with Prairie View A&M Extension in Bexar County, and I live in the northwest part of Bexar County, and I'm here because I wanted to introduce myself, and especially to those farmers and ranchers that are continuing working in the central southern part of Bexar County. I really want to meet with them and see how I can put them in contact with some organization, institution, and also put together some educational programs for them. So I'm available after this. Thank you.
I'm Madeline. I am with TWRI and I'm from College Station, I guess now. And I'm just here to learn about the work and see how best I can help you out.
Howdy everybody, Matt Stellauer here. I am a watershed coordinator in the Matagorda Basin area as well as up in central Texas, Big Elm Creek, up in Belton. And so I'm here to support Mary Michael. Kind of learn from you guys. I've had to do a couple of these similar meetings in the summer, and so where's Mark?
I'm Alan Shelter. I'm just representing myself. I'm here out of curiosity, and I got property in Watershed.
I'm Richard Youngay. I'm a resident of Guadalupe County, state between Alberta and Garland, and I want to protect the watershed.
I guess we're going back this way. I'm sorry, I didn't do that very logical, but we'll go over this side.
I'm Jacob Bailey. I'm with the NRCS in San Antonio. I live in San Antonio, and we work with landowners who fall within the watershed.
Jason Kaczmarek, I'm also with the NRCS office, work out of Wilson County. And as Jacob said, we work with landowners that have interest in well systems.
I'm Lyndon Eli. We're going to go 3 for 3. I work for NRCS, but I'm in Karnes County, and what they said.
Cibolo Creek. I think I've been here, the first meetings that we started with, just knowing what's going on in our Cibolo Creek. Because to, and I also sit on the board of the Alamo Soil and Water District 330 in Bear County.
My name is I'm the general manager of the Cibolo Creek Municipal Authority. We operate the upstream wastewater treatment facilities. I've been coming to these meetings for a lot of years, and I'm also a landowner in the watershed.
Morning, Pat, I'd like to say no with the city council.
Sorry to put you on the spot. You just walked in, but we're gonna name who you're representing, where you're coming from, and why you're here.
Yeah, my name's Dan Walker, landowner, Sutherland Springs, right on the creek.
Awesome, thanks for coming.
Derek Godlitz, I'm the chairman of the board of the San Antonio River Authority and also Wilson County resident.
Right.
Brian Coker, State Soil and Water Conservation Board. I'm out of the Portland Regional Office, but we're providing funding for this watershed.
Anissa Devers, Soil and Water Conservation Board. I am located in Temple headquarters, and I am actually managing this project.
I'm in Wilson County. I'm a member of the Wilson County Resource Protection Project. We're interested in issues with the Cibolo.
I'm Ginger Coleman. I was a member of the original group as a representative of San Antonio River Authority Environmental Advisory Group. I'm no longer with that group, but I'm here as a stakeholder. I have property in outside of Stockdale, and I'm motivated because I'm just interested in water generally. I'm also a member of the Wilson County Resource Protection Project. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, hi, I'm Rachel Draper. I'm from Wilson County News, and I'm also a resident of Wilson County in Floresville.
Hi, I'm with the Newport Engineering Department. I live in Schertz from the area, and just trying to understand this more and be involved.
I'm Thomas, I'm with City Sheriff, I'm the MS4 and floodplain administrator, just coming out of Colorado. I'm a native Texan, been up there for 10 years. I'm living in my camper right now, trying to find a place to live. Close on my house up there on the 7th, so we're trying to get down here, but yeah, I'm real interested in getting things going with the creek and maybe just bringing a little magic down from up north down there.
My name's Clayton Phelps. I'm a local landowner. I've got family in or about Cibolo Creek, all the way from Barney through to Beaverville. We're scattered down all over. So I'm just representing local landowner.
Howdy, I'm Blake Thompson. I work for Green Spaces Alliance in South Texas. We're the land trust that works in this area. So we do land protection with the Air Force, with the Edwards, and the private landowners. So we hold about 1,000 acres of conservation lands in the watershed, and then I live in San Antonio and just kind of work this whole area. South Texas is our neighbor.
My name is Katrina Beatrick, and we have property on the creek over here near Kosciuszko-ish. My children actively swim and fish in the water right now. I didn't know there was much of a problem, but I'm hoping that my great-grandbaby can plan to retire there. And so I am very, very interested in figuring out how to fix if there's a problem and maintain our creek.
Wayne James, Wilson County Soil and Water Conservation.
I'm Jeff McCall with the Fifth Water Service, live in New Braunfels, work in this whole South Texas area to help landowners with tree issues and water issues. So I'm a water resource forester. So if you have any kind of issues with your trees along the river, I'm the person to talk.
Dan Sarker, Rick, myself, just to see some of that alligator home.
Been in the water business for about 60 years now, and water and wastewater. Live on right next to the Cibolo Creek, and I'm the director on East Central, water, special utility district, and this is my wife, Dave.
I'm Caroline Hincher with the Guadalupe County Groundwater Conservation District, and I'm not gonna go through this like crazy, but, we're interested in knowing more about like groundwater surface water interaction, and we're gonna be updating our management plan goals soon to involve more surface water, so I just wanna be involved because Cibolo Creek and Cibolo Watershed covers a good portion of our district. Also, Clayton, I met you at Earth Day, and Randy Schwinn, I'm monitoring well on your property, so good to see some familiar faces here.
Richard, Jennifer Gonzalez, we have our ranch down in Cibolo. We lived here on the Cibolo and Livonia, moved down, get away from the overcrowding up here, but really care about cleaning up the Cibolo and what goes into it from our place into the Cibolo, from all the neighboring ranches. Trying to do things better on our place, so maybe we can inspire all the ranchers and landowners around us to do better as well. That's where we're at.
And I'm Jason Williams. I'm also with TWRI. I live in San Antonio, and I'd just like to learn a couple things from you guys.
Yeah, my name is Lucas Gregory. I'm Associate Director of the Texas Water Resources Institute. We're located at College Station, part of the A&M system, and our charge is to help people address water resource issues statewide. So this is under that umbrella, obviously, and I'm one of the people that actually helped write the watershed plan those years ago, so I probably have a few more gray hairs now than I did back then. And I am also motivated to be here because it's part of my job, so, and I think I'm your next speaker.
Yes, you are. Although I have a couple more slides. So, we really appreciate y'all coming. As you can see, we have a lot of people that really care about this, and we really do this together. If you were part of the original group, you know that these water protection plans don't go anywhere when they are published and put on the shelf. But if they're in the hands of the community, and if that community is motivated, then we can get a lot done. So, we wanted to bring this stakeholder meeting back because we still have a lot of work to do, and we're going to hear about the current water quality today, and we're going to go from there because water quality, it doesn't change fast, it doesn't change easily. So, but first, because I like games and I have the attention span of a fly, we're going to start with a game to get everybody kind of just ready to listen to Death by PowerPoint, right? So, this is a really simple game. I know if you've listened to me long enough, you've played this one before. But it's going to have two pictures on the screen. And one's going to be on the right, and one of them's going to be on the left. It's called this or that. So if you agree or feel more strongly about the one on the right side, you're going to point to the right. If you feel more strongly about the left, easy enough, right? You point to the left. If you want, bonus points, you can look around the table and judge what everyone else is saying. So, first one, we've got blurry pictures. Mary Michael. Beach or mountains or hill country? Beach or mountains? If you're going to pick a vacation. And it's only fun if you get into it and everyone answers. All right, easy enough, right? Now we got barbecue or Tex-Mex.
Barbecue.
Barbecue or Tex-Mex? Worker Lucas, you got both. All right, sweet tea or Dr. Pepper? Dr. Pepper is very Texan, but I don't like it. Sorry, I'm all sweet tea. This one should be easy for a lot of you, I think. Small town or big city? This is San Antonio. All right. Early morning coffee or evening beer?
Both.
Or both, yeah. Start out with a coffee and finish beer. All right, this is my favorite one. Alamo. How do we view it? Texas pride and one of the most important landmarks in the world, or overrated tourist trap? Why do I say this? Well, I don't know if y'all read, there was an article out USA Today, and then there were multiple articles after that. And if you can read this, it's not very easy to read, but I'll read it for you. Remember the Alamo? More like spend a day at the Alamo, and you'll remember to never go back. So how do we have two completely different views on the same thing, right? How do some people see this as an overrated tourist trap, and they write articles for USA Today, and how do some of us feel like this is the pride of Texas?
That's easy.
Because they're liberal.
Enough from Texas.
Well, they're not from some people from Texas, right?
Oh,
So
you show me
it
that first.
really boils down to this. Whether or not we care about something, or how we think about that something, all depends on how that story is told to us, or what the story is. And so we can have this view of the Alamo, or Cibolo Creek, or Texas water, or any of the, blank, and we can have completely different views about it, because maybe we have a different lived experience or a different story. And so what we're going to do today, because we are the story of Cibolo Creek, because a lot of you live on it, you care about it. You care about it because you're here. You wouldn't be here on a Wednesday at 1 p.m. In a dark dance hall with me if you didn't care about Cibolo Creek. And so when we are going to go talk about all these water quality parameters and E. coli and all this stuff that can maybe make your eyes glaze over, we do have to remember that this is the story. This is your story. This is the story of the community, and how are we going to do this? How are we going to make it not just E. coli, but fishing and swimming and just, it's much more than just bacteria numbers, right? And so we have to remember that when we're planning things and we're talking about it. So, to make sure we're all on the same page, and then I'll bring up Lucas. What is a watershed? This is something that I'm sure all of you know, but I talk to a lot of people every day that don't know what a watershed is. And my top answer is this. So I had AI make this, even though I'm not a fan of using ChatGPT, but I did have them make this because it's a shed of water. And that's not what a watershed is, right? But what is a watershed? It's an area of land. So we're talking about Cibolo Creek watershed here, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with what a watershed is. And it's not just the water. We're talking about the creek, but what we're really talking about is all of the land that is in that watershed. And so it's an area of land that when it rains, that rain will end up somewhere in a common body of water. And that is for us, mid to lower Cibolo Creek, or underneath us in the ground. It all depends on how we manage that land. Within our river basin, we have 6 watersheds, one of them being the Cibolo Creek watershed. This has a pointer on it, right? Yeah. So this blue one right here is Cibolo Creek. We're not talking about the whole entire watershed. Why? Because we break them up. The upper watershed also has a watershed protection plan. It is managed by the city of Bernie. We are talking about this area right here, and that's the mid to lower Cibolo Creek. If you are not sure, or if your friend is not sure which watershed they live in, just so that you know that there's this great interactive tool by Texas Parks and Wildlife that is called the Texas Watershed Viewer, and you can type in your address here, and it'll pop up with your river basin, your watershed, and your sub-watershed. This all goes back to your story, right? If you don't know which aquifer you're above, which watershed you're in, or where your rain goes, it's really hard to tell your story, or to talk to the people next to you about the story, right? And so just keep this in the back of your mind. Most of you all already know that you live in this watershed, but if you don't, send this to your friend and love them. So that's all I have for now. You'll hear more about what we're doing implementation-wise later. But I'm going to bring up Lucas because he's the only one here from TWRI that was here at the beginning. So he knows more about the development, and then we'll get more into water quality after that.
Thank you, ma'am. So I got a bone to pick with you on your slide. So you had coffee and beer.
Oh, well,
But
this is the water.
It does take good water to make more coffee anyway, right? So I guess we'll let that go. But now,
I got coffee.
so, thanks for that introduction. Thanks for setting the stage for all this. And sadly, I'm the one that's probably going to talk about the stuff that might glaze your eyes over. This is really the little bit about the watershed and really the backstory of why we're here, so we can kind of keep this in all Harvey's rest of the story. So we're gonna talk about just the historic water quality that led to the development of the watershed protection plan, a little bit about water quality standards and what they mean from a health perspective and like human and critters, and then we'll talk a little bit about the watershed protection plan as well. So I'm gonna try to move through this relatively quickly, and this is like the 30,000 foot overview of this. So if there's anything I gloss over that y'all want to know more about, catch me afterwards. I'll be glad to talk with you more about all the fun facts that go along with it. So, like Mary Michael said, we're only concerned with the lower and mid Cibolo River, or creek, sorry, not river, watershed here. And you might be thinking, why did we chop off the upper part? And really it's because of hydrology. So here in the Edwards Plateau, we've got the recharge zone for the Edwards Aquifer, and it really bisects the watershed and creates two different creeks for all intents and purposes. So probably 99 days out of 100, or maybe even more than that, the creek does not flow continuously from the upper end all the way to the downstream end. Instead, that creek goes subterranean, enters into the aquifer, and you've got a long stretch of dry creek bed there. I like to call that a hike and bike creek because it's dry. You can literally walk into or ride a bike in it, which is super dry. But for the purposes of this watershed plan, it made sense to stop it there because, like I said, almost always it's dry between the two. So this is the highlighted area of the watershed. So that's all the land that drains into the Cibolo Creek in some shape, form, or fashion. We do have a couple of named tributaries. So we have Martinez Creek, which is over here in this neck of the woods. We have Saltrio Creek. That's actually Saltrio Creek there. This is Martinez Creek. And then Clifton Branch down here in this part, I guess a little bit farther south here. So those are the named creek segments that are included in this watershed. There's a lot of other little wet weather creeks and gullies and things like that that transmit water after it rains, but they're not generally big enough to be considered named creeks, at least in the state of Texas. You may have a road sign or something like that on the highway with the name, but they don't get evaluated for statewide water quality standards. So just a few quick facts about the watershed, and these are numbers that are pulled from the watershed protection plan. So like the population estimate, that's going to be old. That's back from 2015. So it's arguably much higher than that now. But the land area still hasn't changed. So just a little over 371,000 acres. Population is probably somewhere in the 200,000 people range now. And then the major land uses are still about the same. So we've got 42 or 43% of forested or shrubland. So that's your mesquite countryside, your live oak, savanna type stuff and things like that. Pasture and hay is another big chunk at about almost 30% of the watershed. So there's a lot of good pastures out there that get managed for either hay or grazing production purposes. Developed land, this is about 51,000 acres, probably more than that now, especially in the upper end of the watershed. And then your row crop is also a pretty good chunk there at about 11%. And then there's some other land uses that are like little mining land, barren land, and things like that. So they make a pretty small chunk. And then the last item, and again, this is from the watershed plan. So back in 2015, there were 9 different permitted wastewater treatment facilities or wastewater treatment plants out there across the watershed. And at the time, they were permitted to discharge 18.7 million gallons a day of treated wastewater, either into a tributary or into Cibolo Creek proper. And again, these are numbers are 10 plus years old now, so take it with a grain of salt, but I just want to set the stage for the planning purposes and all that. So a little bit of background on why we're here talking about water quality, and really it comes down to some laws and rules and regs that are out there. So the Clean Water Act, and this is the Federal Clean Water Act, is the water law that is out there that sets basically the boundaries of the sandbox for the states to play within as far as protecting water quality. And this came about back in the 70s, really whenever it was developed. It's been revised a few times since then. But it essentially dictates to the states that they will develop water quality standards for their evaluated water lines. At the federal level, US EPA administers that act, but they delegate the authority to implement that down to the state level. So here in Texas, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is that entity that sets those state water quality standards. Now, to do that, they do the math, do the science behind the scenes, and come up with what they think are reasonable numbers to propose as water quality standards. They send them up to EPA. The folks that know what they're talking about at EPA review it and either agree or disagree with some of those water quality standards. Sometimes it takes a long time to get those things hammered out. So, for example, there are things that were proposed by TCEQ back in 2010 that they're still arguing with EPA on. So, it's a great example of government efficiency, right? Makes me just scratch my head. But anyways, we'll not berate them any longer. They do a good job of implementing these standards, setting those standards, and working with us on making adjustments where necessary. It's not always been that way, but over time, I've been in this business for 20 years now, and they have listened to folks in the industry and basically allowed us to create some more flexibility and make things more appropriate for the water bodies. So, the water quality standards are the benchmark. That's what we always strive for. If they don't meet those goals for water quality, they get put on the list called the 303 dealers. And it's like a section of the Clean Water Act that talks about impaired water. So numbers are irrelevant, kind of like the score and whose line is it anyway. But that's the list that you don't want to be on if you're a water body. So that means that your water quality is not meeting the designated standards or criteria for that water body. So, long story short, parts of Cibolo Creek are not meeting that water quality standard. Before we dive into the numbers though, I'm going to just briefly talk about the types of pollutant sources that cause these problems. So there's two primary types. There are point sources and non-point sources. So point sources are something that you can literally point at. So it's like the end of a pipe where something is being discharged into the stream. Examples of these are wastewater treatment plants, industrial discharges, and things of that nature. These are regulated. They have permits in place, or supposed to. Not all pipes have a permit tied to them, but they're supposed to. And they have to abide by certain restrictions in those permits. If they don't, they have some penalties that get implemented. But by and large, the permitted entities do a really good job of meeting those water quality standards. There's always a few bad actors out there, and you know, whenever we have a big gully washer pipe rain event or something like that, things can go haywire for a little bit. So they're not perfect systems, but generally speaking, they do a really good job of treating that wastewater and protecting in-stream water quality. Non-point sources are the other big category, and that is essentially pollutants that come from literally everywhere. So they're scattered out there across the watershed. You may be able to point to one specific point of the non-point source, but it may be a whole lot of them. So like septic systems, for example. You may know where your septic system is in your backyard, but the other 5,000 people that live in the watershed, you know they have a septic system, but you don't know exactly where it is. Same with livestock. You know livestock are contributors to pollutants across the watershed, and you can generally say, oh, there's cows in that pasture, but they're not in a specific spot all the time. They move around, they do their own thing. So, other examples of non-point source pollution are stormwater. You know, we know cities generate a lot of stormwater due to the impervious surface, and they have pipes that convey this stuff, but that's still a large area that stormwater is generated from. And then all other runoff is the non-regulated stuff that falls under that umbrella. So that's your livestock, your wildlife, your pets, your lawn and landscapes, all the things that are out there on the surface of the watershed are potential contributors of multiple different types of pollutants. Okay, so water quality standards wise, these are, I'm just going to give you all a quick crash course on this, and these are the numbers that the state establishes for various things. So the first is the designated use for contact recreation, and this is one that is built to protect human health for those folks that are out there contacting a water body. E. coli is the fecal indicator bacteria that's used to evaluate that. It's not all E. coli pathogenic. I know you don't hear about it in the news, always makes somebody sick from eating spinach or something like that. And there are pathogenic strains, but they're not all bad. So what they do is they indicate the presence of fecal contamination into a water body. And it's not from any one source, it's from everything with hair, fur, and feathers. So if you think about that, a lot of different sources of E. coli that are out there. primary contact recreation standard, this is the one that applies for mid and lower Cibolo Creek and all of its tributaries. That's there to protect uses of the water body where it's considered like the most potential contact. So swimming, wading by kids, whitewater sports, things like that, where there's a decent chance that you might get some water in your mouth or take a drink. Inadvertently. And at that level of bacteria, so 126, and CFU is called a colony forming unit. So it would be a dot of E. coli growing on a petri dish. So that's a colony forming unit. So at a level of 126 of those dots per 100 milliliters of water, that sets what EPA considers an acceptable level of risk for anybody that's contact recreating to a sewer. And what that equates to is about 32 people out of 1,000 might get some sort of water quality related issue. It could be a rash on your skin, it could be a stomach bug that makes you feel like death warmed over, or something in between in there. And that may sound like a high number, but if you just survey the general population at any given point in time, it's the same 32 out of 1,000 likely have some sort of a gastrointestinal illness at any given point in time. So, whenever you put it in that perspective, it's really not that bad. And that's only it's not a, you will get sick. It's a, if you consume this water or contact this water, you might get sick. So it's not a guarantee. So, that's more like a little bit of a warning is really what it boils down to. It's not a guarantee that you don't need to be in the water, but it's just saying, hey, this is a little bit higher than the state's okay with. So you might want to think twice about swimming in that water. And if you're not consuming it, 9 times out of 10, probably more like 99 out of 100, you're totally fine. If you do happen to take a big drink of water, then you might not be so happy about it, but it's usually not that bad. Okay, moving over to the aquatic life side of things, you know, the critters that call those creeks home, they need some good oxygen in that water to maintain themselves. Fish require oxygen, of course. And Cibolo Creek and some of the tributaries have 2 different levels of dissolved oxygen requirements applied. So there is what's considered a high aquatic life use, and the dissolved oxygen measurement is in milligrams per liter. So the average needs to be at 5 milligrams per liter with a minimum of 4 for those high aquatic life uses. And the limited use, and these are typically present in the smaller tributaries, are lower. So 3 for average and 2 for the minimum. And I think it's no more than 20% of the individual values that drop below that minimum for it to still meet that water quality standard. So there are a couple segments or assessment units within the watershed that are not quite up to snuff there, but it's pretty decent. And I'll show you some graphics in a minute that kind of illustrate what we have across the watershed. And then the last one we're going to talk about is water quality screening levels for nutrients. So Texas does not have nutrient criteria established for their water bodies. They have what's called a screening level, and this is basically a step in the process of developing these criteria. So essentially what they did is they took all of the nutrient data from across the state of Texas, found the 85th percentile, and those are the numbers that they came up with for total phosphorus, ammonium nitrate, and then chlorophyll A is obviously not a nutrient, but it's a measure of aquatic plant growth that is equated back to nutrient concentrations, so it's the green pigment in plants. And they developed those screening levels. So if your water quality samples exceed those levels more than 20% of the time, they consider it to have a concern or elevated, whatever it might be, ammonia, sulfate, whatever. So it's kind of an indicator that, hey, something's not quite right here. Maybe there's a little bit more nutrition than this water body actually needs, and maybe the plant growth is going to go haywire if it continues to stay that way. So those are all just some decent indicators of your water quality in your streams. And I kind of look at this as a report card. So the standards and criteria and these screening levels are the benchmark that you're achieving or striving to achieve. And if you don't achieve them, then you don't get a negative, essentially. So that's where some of the Cibolo Creek watershed is at this point. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, so I won't go through it pretty quick, but bacteria, we're talking about E. coli, and it comes from everything with hair, fur, and feathers. It's naturally occurring in many cases, so if we took all the humans away, all the things that we've done that have made these watersheds what they are today, there would still be bacteria in the water. So we're never gonna get rid of all of it. And not all of it is bad per se, but there are things that we can do and we can manage to reduce the amount of that E. coli that's in the water bodies. Okay, so here's a few graphics that show kind of what the water quality looked like when we started developing this watershed protection plan. So again, this is 10 years ago data, and we're gonna have, the next presentation is gonna talk about what it looks like today. But you can see a couple of things on these graphics. So the first part is each of the dots is an individual water quality sample and the E. coli concentration in that sample. The solid black line going across the middle of each graphic is that 126 coliforming units line. So that's the water quality standard. So ideally, we would want to see most of our data points down here below that line, meaning that they're less than 126. You can see that that's not the case. It's kind of a mixed bag. You have some above, some below. And honestly, water quality is not real bad in Cibolo. It's pretty stinking close to that water quality standard. So it's way better than a lot of other water bodies out there. I'll say that. So not to say that there's not some good that can be done, some improvements that can be made, but we're a lot closer to the target than a lot of water bodies. So, and these graphics are each from the various points in the stream. So really, it's pretty consistent across the board as far as the concentrations are concerned. So not really any big problem areas per se or anything like that. So again, it's a combination of all the things that are contributing to those bacteria concentrations. Dissolved oxygen. I'm bad about getting part from the horse shelf. I apologize for that. But basically, we're looking at how much oxygen is in the water, and we're concerned about it because of those fish and other invertebrates and things that are down there that require that oxygen to make a living. So the less oxygen you have, the harder it is for those critters to live. There are some species that can tolerate really low oxygen, so you might look at a creek and say, oh, this fish in there, it's all good. They may be just the ones that are tough as nails, you couldn't kill them with a gallon of bleach. But the more susceptible species, they're going to go away pretty quick whenever your oxygen starts to drop below this critical threshold. So once you get down into that 4 and 5 milligrams per liter range, it starts to get stressful for a lot of those species. And things that cause low dissolved oxygen are temperature, the amount of organic matter that's in there, whether it's leaves or grass and stuff like that that goes into the water bodies naturally, or stuff that comes in through those discharge points that are out there. That all increases the organic matter load, which decreases dissolved oxygen. And then turbulent water, if you got a lot of ripples or some waterfalls, things like that, that adds oxygen back in there. But the temperature is another big one as well. So dissolved oxygen wise, these are the two sections of the stream that had some issues. So upstream, near the more populated area, had some some low dissolved oxygen issues early on. More recently, which, I mean, this is back in 2003, 4, 5, so that's been a long time ago, huh? But more recently, it was looking a lot better. And then down here we had, generally speaking, the average was pretty good, but a fair number of those individual grab samples were below that 3 milligrams per liter threshold. So it needed a little bit of attention as well. And then the nutrients, like I said, these things come from all over the place. Sorry. I don't know how my computer still can make up the internet. Oh my gosh.
Yes, your team's calling.
Apparently, I'm trying to turn it off, so I thought that they call that. All right, so nutrients, they come from a lot of different places. Again, that organic matter that's coming in there naturally releases nutrients into the water body, which is not, nutrients are not a bad thing by any means. Everything has to have some nutrition to be able to do its thing, but too much of anything is not necessarily good. So that's, these excess nutrients can lead to those algae blooms, excessive plant growth and things like that that can lead to some pretty unsightly water conditions and some pretty poor water quality conditions. And you might be thinking, plants lose oxygen when they grow, which is true, but whenever they die, that decay process consumes that oxygen. So you get a lot of oxygen usage in those situations and make it some low dissolved oxygen. So natural factors are just, erosion, flowing obviously the fertilizer that we apply to our yards, the sidewalk, and pastures and croplands can make its way down hill and into those water bodies. Animal manure, septic systems, wastewater treatment plants, industrial discharges, things like that are all contributors of nutrient loading, or can be. All right. Teams call me. All right, there we go. All right, so nutrient wise, this is what we're looking at across the creek. So in the tributaries, and lower Cibolo, we were actually doing pretty good. There's just one segment that was a little bit above that screening level, and this is for nitrate. Mid-Cibolo, we had the upper end of that was a little bit elevated. Again, not bad, just barely above the screening level. And then, I'm sorry, this is mid-Cibolo. So we did have one section up here that was pretty rough nitrate rock, so it was pretty significantly above that screening level right here. Phosphorus was somewhat similar to the tributaries. We had a big elevation over here, which was probably 3 or 4 times higher than that. Mid-Cibolo, I get my language mixed up, sorry. Lower Cibolo was actually pretty good, with only the upstream portion being elevated, and then Mid-Cibolo, again, high points as well. So, not too dissimilar from what we see in other water bodies, but again, something that we need to take a look at. So, all of that is being shared with y'all just to show that, hey, there were some water quality problems, and that's what prompted the development of the watershed protection plan. So, watershed protection plans are stakeholder-driven documents, voluntary, and they basically outline a plan to restore water quality in a watershed and address those complex water quality issues. So, the goal is to improve what's already there and then come up with a path forward to keep it in good levels. And basically, it's an effort to talk about all the things that are going on in the watershed, get the people at the table that need to be there to make decisions, and come up with things that they're going to be willing to implement to protect water quality. So, that was the goal of this watershed protection plan. And what these things include are these 9 key elements. So this is what EPA requires us to put in these things. So first you have to identify the cause and source of your water quality impairments. Then you have to estimate how much of a pollutant load reduction you need to meet those water quality standards. And then you get into describing what the things you're going to do are to help achieve those water quality standards. So that's the planned management measures. From there, it really gets kind of into the weeds as far as what are we going to do to get those management measures implemented, what kind of technical assistance do we need, what kind of financial assistance is needed, and things of that nature. Information and education is a huge component of that, so A, informing people about what's going on in the watershed that's causing these problems, and then B, talking to them about what they can do on their whatever land they manage, whether it's their little patch of grass in their front yard or big property down by the creek or at all points in between. Talking to them about tools and educating them on what they can do to maybe better take care of their piece of real estate is a huge, huge component. And then the last bits of the watershed plan outline a schedule to implement various things. There are written milestones, like some targets on what we want to do over time. And then there are some criteria to determine how well we're doing as far as meeting that goal of reducing pollutants. And then lastly, it's a conversation about what we're going to do water quality monitoring wise to keep tabs on things going forward and evaluate how good we're doing from an implementation perspective. So this thing got kicked off a number of years ago now, and it was basically the impaired waters list in 2014 that kind of spurred this thing into action. So a few years after that, in 2016, we worked for, in partnership with the River Authority, secured a grant to actually develop this watershed protection plan. So we began hosting meetings in 2017. One of them was actually in this room long ago. And in late 2018, we wrapped up the development of the watershed protection plan, and it was sent off to the agencies for review. It was published in its final format in May of 2019. So it's been a minute since this thing was developed, but it's still alive and well and kicking a little bit, and we're basically looking to reinvigorate that. So the things that got included in the watershed protection plan from a management measure perspective are summarized here. We're not gonna go into great details, but the watershed still has a fair chunk of rural area in it, so implementing conservation practices on those agricultural lands and open spaces was a priority item. Feral hog control assistance was one. Everybody loves to hate feral hogs. We had a great conversation about them on the way down here, and talked about all their positive qualities that we all love. Identifying repairing failing septic systems was a big problem. That was pointed out and included in there. Pet waste management was one that was noted as a need, especially in the upper end. So when people become pets, and some people don't necessarily take care of their pet waste as well as they could, and pound for pound, pet waste is some of the more potent manure that's out there. It has more E. coli per gram than basically anything else out there. I don't know why. Their gut does that, I guess. Stormwater management was a big one. Obviously, it was a development that was or had occurred back then. It was a big concern, and then obviously the last few years, development's been going like gangbusters. So it's probably an even bigger need now to help manage that stormwater, to keep water on the land rather than letting it fall to the creek and carry whatever it is picked up with it. Sanitary sewer overflows were one that was mentioned. Like I mentioned earlier, these wastewater collection systems and the wastewater treatment plants do a good job, but every now and then stuff goes haywire. I know in a lot of big rain events, they'll have inflow and infiltration into those systems, and they basically get overloaded for a period of time, and that's where you'll sometimes have water coming out of the manhole rather than staying in the line like it's supposed to, and that's obviously a problem, albeit a very small time frame, but it can get pretty potent slug of E. coli and other stuff. Wastewater reuse is one that people viewed as a viable solution to help mitigate some of the wastewater discharges into the water body and help meet some water supply needs too. So I know that's always been, or not always, but it's been popular in the San Antonio area for a while, and stakeholders at the time were interested in doing more of that across the watershed. I know there's some limitations to that, and costs are high in many cases, but nonetheless, that's included in there. And then just illicit dumping. So, a lot of rural areas, people just chuck trash out the window as they're driving down the road, or maybe there's their favorite road crossing where they like to throw stuff in the creek. I know we find all kinds of interesting things out there whenever we're out and about doing our water quality sampling. So that was included in there as well. And I think that was my last slide about the watershed protection plan. So I know that was fast and covered a lot of ground, but are there any questions y'all have? Yes, ma'am.
I didn't see on your list there about, oil waste.
Oil?
Yes. Y'all work with the railroad commission to, especially in this area, we have a lot of oil wells that are expanded their lifespan and they're not, shutting them down, they're not pumping them. Of course, they take forever to do that. So I didn't see that on that list.
Right, and that was not included in the watershed plan back then, and I don't remember that being a topic of discussion in any of the meetings that we had for stakeholders.
So it should be.
It could, yeah, and if we do a revision to this thing, we can certainly add it in there. I will say that the water quality standards that exist for all the things that we were talking about, oil really doesn't factor in to that too much. Now, granted, it is not anything you want to avoid, not trying to get the free pass, but it doesn't affect bacteria levels, could affect dissolved oxygen and some other things, but there's not very much hydrocarbon testing that gets done out there for just your regular surface water streams. And we have tried to work with the railroad commission before, but like I said, the state takes forever to do anything, and if they claim that they're prioritizing the most problematic wells and trying to use the limited resources they have on those priority wells, which I'm not a big fan of that approach, but it is what it is. And oftentimes these oil companies change their name and divest themselves from wells, so there's a lot of them out there that they don't even know who to spend their money on.
But to my question then as to
do have a well collection program. It's woefully insufficient as far as the amount of funds go to address the needs that are out there. Like I said, they have their list of priority wells that need to be capped, and they're working down that list. So, to my knowledge, that's about the most that they're doing on those types of things. So, Ryan, you have something to add?
I was gonna say, the only watershed that I remember working in that we worked with the railroad commission was Plum Creek. And that's, Lockhart and Woodland, if you ever drive by Woodland, you know where you're at. But, they were very active in the development, and they had maps of abandoned wells. I don't remember anything being done. I know they get some funding. I don't know if they still get some funding from TCQ, because they're trying to do some plugging. But, a lot of times, just
Even to get on the plugging list, it's an act of God.
Yeah. I think, if and when we revise this plan, we can definitely add that in there and kind of, maybe,
right.
Maybe get a little loud about it and say, hey, we have this here too, and we'd like y'all to at least come and help us address it.
It's not only affecting the Cibolo Creek, but I'm talking the statewide.
Absolutely.
Water.
Yes, ma'am. And again, like Lucas said, it's woefully funded, it's very insufficiently funded, which a lot of water quality stuff is, in my opinion, just working in it for as long as I have. But it's definitely something that we can, for the watershed, add into the plan and try to get more attention paid to it, because, yeah, it's definitely an issue that needs to be taken care of, so.
Is there go back to your watershed map, where you were, you showed all these tributaries coming into the Cibolo Creek?
Yes, sir.
Right there. I didn't see the St. Clair Creek on that, and, up above that is a highly populated area. Cibolo, Marion, getting populated. It comes in right off of Jim Road down there, and it's amazing this time, in this last rain, where, what flooded and what didn't flood. So, I just, just put some emphasis on that piece of watershed there. A lot of homes, a lot of people that are taking, 200 pounds, and put it on the front door.
Right. Yeah, like I said, this is all 10-plus-year-old information, so this map of city limits is probably out of date now, and certainly the developed area is way out of date now. And there are a lot of smaller creeks like Santa Clara Creek and others that carry a lot of water under certain conditions. But from the runoff water, it's not going to flood. Right. Yeah, and, but yeah, that's for everybody below. Move down to the top. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I'm on the list to get copies of permits that TCEQ gets, and so often I get permits that, for discharge of their wastewater from Houston into Cibolo Creek, from all over the place into Cibolo Creek. When does TCEQ say no? Is there a limit on, when do they say no to that? I just got one, the one from Houston really floored me, that was really recent. With thousands of gallons of wastewater that winds up in the Cibolo Creek.
Okay, so it's probably just the owner of whatever entity lives in Houston. The city of Houston's not gonna pipe their wastewater all the way over here.
Oh, the entity, okay, gotcha.
So they just own land here, maybe they're a developer or something like that.
Right.
So logistically and economically, they would not.
So can TCEQ say, no, we have enough wastewater going into Cibolo Creek?
They
How do
can,
they do that?
and they do have multiple teams over there that review these permits, and it's a fairly rigorous process that they go through, and they evaluate whether or not the water body can basically assimilate that wastewater contribution, because there's gonna be an effect. We're pumping in organic matter, we're pumping in whatever nutrients that go along with it, so it's gonna have an effect on mainstream water quality. And they have to have capacity in that stream. So basically what they do is that they look at the water bodies themselves, they look at the volumes of water that are normally there. They math behind the scenes and determine whether or not it can handle more wastewater. Kind of a black box approach that they take, because you don't get to see all the math that they do, and sometimes it's question marks running around these things that they come up with as being okay. But they do evaluate that, and then they obviously have, like folks like you that receive the copies of these permits, and people have the ability to ask questions and go to these public comment meetings about them and push back on them. And I know your College Station, not long ago, there was one that was denied because of all of the pushback that it received from that specific area. So they do listen to an extent. Now, I know the developers look their system in a lot of cases, and they may go back to the drawing board and change their plan and try to make it better. But it's again, not a perfect process, by any means. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, it is like treated wastewater that goes into the creeks and the stuff, right? Like Apple,
Supposed to be,
yeah, so it's treated wastewater.
Yeah.
My other question is the on-site sewage facilities, have y'all had any luck tracking them and getting people to like notify y'all that their system is failing and nothing? People that are not really.
Nobody really likes to advertise that they have a federal septic system. It's more of a sweep it under the rug thing.
So what's your checks and balances on that?
Well, so the check and balance is the county designated representative, or whomever is the permitting authority for that specific area. It's typically usually like the county health department. Some areas it's the river authority as the designated representative. And basically, the mechanism is that a complaint is filed, they go out and investigate the complaint and determine whether or not the system is failing. If it is, then they can levy fines, things like that, but it takes a while to get them addressed. And septic systems are not cheap, by any stretch of the imagination. You know, an aerobic system nowadays is probably gonna run you about $15,000 for a new one. Conventional system probably 8 to 10, and it all is location specific too. So, people don't generally get excited about failing septic systems unless something ends up in the floor of their bathroom, but they don't want in the floor of their bathroom. And then they get excited about fixing it. But until then, as long as they pull up flushes and everything goes away, they're fine.
I'd say generally I get more calls from an angry neighbor, so the neighbor will report someone about something they don't like to me, and then I'll find some, like the authorized agent, I'll call them, and then usually it has to be a filed complaint to the right person, not to me, but I usually just play the middleman. It's never really the person that's actually doing the thing.
Any other questions? All right, if not,
We have a break program, Jason?
We can,